7, chapter 2. No, D&D number 7, Warriors in Jesus' Name, chapter 2. I'll get it, Bella called when the doorbell sounded. Smoothing her dress, she opened the door. Hi, she said, somewhat breathless. Please come in. Mark stood, dumbfounded, his eyes traveling over his student, taking in the knee-length black dress, the pale skin of her cleavage, the high heels, the gorgeous legs, the diamonds glittering at her ears and throat, the tendrils of straight black hair that fell softly around her heart-shaped face, and the tiny pink tongue that licked her lips nervously. Dad, Jojo said, nudging his father. Oh, yeah, sorry. Wow, Bella, you look amazing. He watched as her face turned a lovely shade of pink and she glanced uneasily over her shoulder. She turned back to him. Thank you, Master Mark. Mark, we're not in class. Just call me Mark. Yes, sir, she said automatically. He smiled. We're going to have to work on that. Please come in. I'll get Logan. He's probably in the kitchen. Thanks. Mark and Jojo stepped inside. Bella closed the front door, turned, and dashed toward the kitchen. Mark took advantage of the opportunity to look around. The house was old money. Traditional foyer, giant sweeping staircase, all the heavy wood doors that opened out on the foyer area were closed at this moment. A large painting of Gordon and Logan hung over a huge antique table opposite the stairs. Bella's presence in the picture was noticeably missing. The table bore a bowl of fruit, 2 gold candlesticks, and a leather-bound box. Nice place, huh? Mark said softly to his son. No fun, Jojo replied. You know, Dad. No fun. Mark looked again. Yeah, I get you, pal. Logan came from the back of the house wearing a smile. Hey, Logan, Jojo said. Hey. You ready? Mark asked. Yes, sir. Did your nephew not come? Bella asked. Oh, he's in the car. Oh, okay. Well, you guys have fun. Bye, Mom, Logan said, kissing her cheek. Bye, sweetie. Run upstairs and tell your father you're leaving. He looked up the steps, then back to his mother as if to protest, and their eyes met. Reluctantly, Logan went upstairs. Mark's eyes were drawn immediately back to Bella. Did I tell you how nice you look? Bella actually giggled. The sound took Mark's breath away. He just realized he'd never seen nor heard her laugh. Wondering what was happening to him and trying to control the pounding of his heart, he grinned at her. Yes, you did, Bella answered. Did I say thank you? I have no idea. She giggled again. Well, I'm glad someone can make my wife smile, Gordon said as he came down the steps, smiling at Mark, Logan trailing behind. He held out his hand and Mark stepped forward and shook it. Hello, Gordon. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Gordon asked. I think it was the Bar Association dinner held in honor of Judge Mullins this past January, Mark answered. Ah, yes, that was it. As a matter of fact, I think I remember you had just passed the bar exam. Actually, I passed the exam over a year ago. And you have a little practice going? Not yet. For now, I'm with the law firm of Lee, Baker, and Todd. Oh yes, Justin Lee. It's nice that you have friends to give you a foothold. Absolutely, Mark agreed, ignoring the barb. Justin is like family, and I'm happy to be there with his firm, learning from the best. Gordon's eyes narrowed only slightly, but Mark knew he'd hit home. Glancing at Bella, though, Mark felt immediately contrite. Her eyes were wide open, her face pale. Behind her, though, Logan was smiling. Gordon followed Mark's eyes to his wife, and he draped his arm heavily and possessively about her shoulders. Well, Bella and I are grateful that you would stoop to babysitting while we go hobnob with the governor. No problem. Logan is a fine young man. I'm honored to be able to help out. Besides, Jojo gets tired of trying to keep the old man occupied, I'm sure. Well, I recommend marriage, Gordon said, allowing his hand to slide down Bella's back to rest on her hip. Mark saw Bella blanch. He pretended he didn't notice. He smiled. Well, I haven't found a woman who would have me. He extended his hand. Well, the boys and I will get out of your hair. Are you ready, Logan? Yes, sir. Gordon shook his hand once more and admonished his son to behave, and as they made their way out to the car, Both Mark and Logan looked back over their shoulder. They didn't realize they were both having the same thoughts. New scene. Well, 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 Agent Adams, I have to say you clean up nicely, Bree said as Joey Adams approached from the stairwell. He smiled and strode right up to her, took both her hands and looked her over. Miss Sheridan, you are one gorgeous woman. Flattery, Agent Adams, she whispered, will get you nowhere. He frowned. I'll keep that in mind. And call me Joey. He stepped closer, pushing her back against the wall. What are you doing? Trust me, he said just before he lowered his mouth to hers. Breeze gasped. She struggled against him, then stilled when she heard Bella's voice. Breeze? Is that you? Joey let her go and turned as if he were a kid caught with his hands in the cookie jar. Bella and Gordon stood side by side, staring at them. Hi, Bella, Bree said shakily. She nodded toward Bella's husband. Gordon. Breeze, Gordon said, his eyebrows raised haughtily. This is Joey Adams, well, a friend of mine. Oh, come on now, Breeze. You said you were going to tell your sister, Joey said with a smile. Tell me what? Uh, Joey and me, I mean, we're like together. Joey's your date? Oh, I think it's progressed a little further than that, Gordon offered. Joey grinned. I've heard you were sharp. Joey Adams, the actor? Gordon asked. That's me. Aren't you Mark Adams' brother? Bella queried. Yes, do you know him? He teaches the Saturday martial arts class that Logan and I take. He's actually watching Logan for us tonight. Our babysitter fell through. Bella gave a short laugh. This is such a strange coincidence. Yes, it is, Gordon said. It is indeed a small world. How long have you two been an item? Oh, only a few weeks, Bree said quickly. I can't believe you didn't tell me, Bella chided. Joey shrugged. We were making sure it was going to really happen before we let others in on our feelings. So, what are your feelings? Bella asked, unable to control her curiosity. That's hardly your business, Gordon answered. That's okay, I don't mind answering. Breeze and I, well, there's no other way to put it. We think we're in love. Joey grinned at Breeze's sharply indrawn breath. How nice. Well, we don't want to be late, Gordon said, taking Bella's arm and pulling her toward the large dining hall. Joey watched them leave. Breeze jerked on his arm to give him a piece of her mind, but he already had his phone to his ear. It's all clear. You have a few hours. Don't mess it up. No, I'll handle the car they're in. You just get the others. Pocketing the phone, he looked up at Breeze, who stood with her hands on her hips, glaring at him. Who was that? She asked. Other agents moving in to plant the cameras, microphones, and other tracing equipment in their home, phone, and cars. Oh, that knocked some of the steam out of her, but she pulled in another breath. What do you think you were doing back there? His face registered innocence. What? You mean when I kissed you? You know good and well that's what I'm talking about. A wide smile covered his face. My job. And it doesn't suck. He grabbed her hand, tucked it into the crook of his arm. Come on, I want to keep an eye on the happy couple. New scene. Logan laughed so hard his soda came out of his nose. He choked, while young Eric and Jojo took turns slapping him on the back, themselves not able to stop laughing. Finally, having regained their composure, Eric went on with his story. I never even had to step in, which was a good thing because my father would have had my butt. He looked quickly up at his uncle. Oh, sorry. Mark laughed. Yeah, I bet. I'm going to go order another pizza. Be right back. Dad, that is so lame. You could order from our waitress. You don't have to go to the counter. We all know you're going to hit on that lady up there. Do you? Well, now, I'm sorry to be so transparent. He stood and made his way to the counter. Your dad is cool, Logan said. Yeah, he's okay. Do you and him do stuff like this a lot? When he has time. If he has a big case, I hardly ever see him. You know what that's like. Dad says your father has one of the biggest law firms in the state. Jojo glanced at his cousin Eric as he made this statement. He'd already discussed his suspicions with him. Eric not only was his cousin, but was his closest friend in the world, besides his dad. Jojo and Eric had decided it would be good to get Logan to open up about his father. Yeah, whatever. Logan turned his attention to Eric. So, what's it like living with your mom and dad? I mean, Ricky Keno and Brianna Adams. It must be totally awesome to live with famous movie stars, huh? Eric smoothed his black hair back from his forehead and sighed. I don't think of them as anything other than just my parents. I mean, to me, they're just, people. Though, as people go, they're like pretty cool. But let's don't talk about them. Let's talk about the girls that just sat down over there. Eric grinned. There's three of them, one for each of us. I'll take the blonde, Jojo said quickly. I get red, Logan said, proud that he'd had the guts to speak up. I guess I get the other one then, Eric said cheerfully. The fat one, Jojo laughed. That's not fat, Logan said, gripping his own chest as if he had breasts. They burst out laughing again, and Jojo patted Logan on the back to let him know that was a good one. Logan smiled. It felt good to forget about home and have friends for a little while. Being an only child had never been a good thing as far as he was concerned. Then again, he was glad there was no one else in his house to have to deal with his father. What would it be like to have Ricky Keno or Master Mark as a father? He shook his head. Even trying to imagine it caused his heart to ache. Even though his father had never hit him, he made it very obvious that he thought of Logan as a burden he'd rather not deal with. Logan hated the man, mostly because he was so mean to his mom. He yelled at her, pushed her, strangled her, and slapped her. A few times he'd actually punched her like, you would punch another man, like with a fist. And they didn't know Logan knew that his father did other things to her, too. Horrible things. He swallowed and took a giant gulp of his soda. I still love Grand Theft Auto, Jojo was saying, but Call of Duty is always good. What's your all time favorite game, Logan? Logan shrugged. I gotta go back to Fortnite. Yeah, Jojo and Eric both agreed at the same time. Hey, look, Eric, Jojo said, your girl is going over to the jukebox. Eric grinned. I guess that means I'm up to bat. He stood, tugged at his t-shirt, and walked toward the unsuspecting girl. You okay? Jojo asked once Eric was gone. Logan gave a small smile and nodded. Yeah, I'm good. Jojo waited, unsure if he should say what he'd planned to say. Oh well, he thought. Here goes. Listen, Logan, I know we don't spend too much time together or anything, but I mean, you ever want to get together and do stuff or like talk about stuff? Well, I mean, I'm your man? Logan eyed Jojo. He was thinking that Jojo and him could pass for brothers. Jojo was a year older and a little taller. They had about the same color brown hair, but Jojo's eyes were brown and Logan's were blue, like both his mom and dad. Hey, look, I didn't mean to No, it's cool, Logan said quickly. He took out a cell phone. What's your number? Just as Logan finished putting the number in his phone, they were interrupted by the blonde member of the female trio they'd spotted earlier. Hi. Logan and Jojo both turned eyes up to see a pretty blonde, batting her eyelashes. Since it was the blonde and Jojo had already claimed her, Logan leaned back to watch. Hi, Jojo said. How's it going? Good. I was just wondering if one of y'all would like to go over and play some skee ball with me. Y'all? You're not from around here, are you? Smiling, she shook her head, causing her hair to fall forward over her face. She brushed it back with her hand. No, my family just moved here from Tennessee. Wow, so how do you like it here? It's okay, but it's hard to make new friends. Jojo stood. Well, you seem to be doing all right. I'm Jojo. He held out his hand. She smiled. Hey, Jojo, I'm Mandy. Nice to meet you. He motioned down toward Logan. And this is Logan. She smiled sweetly. Hey. Hi, Logan said. Well, you want to go play? Jojo asked her. Sure. They walked away. Jojo looked back over his shoulder with a big grin, and Logan gave him a thumbs up. Logan watched them walk away, then glanced over at the table where the redhead remained, sitting with a man and a woman. He caught her eye, and she immediately looked down toward her lap. Great. He had to pick the shy one. Is business slow? Mark asked as he came back to the table. Logan shrugged. I guess. Mark peered over at the girl and back to Logan. You may have to make the first move. Maybe. What time is the movie? It starts at 9:30. You've got plenty of time. I might go over in a minute, Logan said. Mark nodded. I was really shy when I was your age. Actually, I think I still am. Logan looked up into his eyes. Really? Sure. Logan shook his head. You didn't seem shy when you went to talk to that lady at the counter. Well, it's taken years of practice to be able to do that. And after mustering all that courage, she still turned me down. Oh, but that's cool. I can handle it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, huh? It stings the ego a bit, is all. Not so bad. Yeah, I guess not. I never thought of it that way. Mark wondered if Gordon ever took the time to talk to his son. He doubted it. The few times he'd met Gordon, he seemed extremely egocentric. So, are you excited about your belt test? Logan nodded. Maybe. You nervous? Yeah, I guess. Well, don't be. I don't usually say this to someone who's about to test, but you're one of the best in the class. You're a natural. Do you really think so? I wouldn't say it unless I meant it. You keep coming to class and working hard. You'll be a black belt before you know it. Now, your mom, she's another story. Logan smiled. Yeah, she's a little uncoordinated. Mark grinned. Well, she tries hard, and that's all that counts. She'll eventually get it. It just won't be as fast as you. Logan's smile disappeared. Yeah, so that means I'll need to protect her until she can protect herself. Mark sighed. He didn't want to push too hard, too fast, but he had a feeling Bella Landau definitely needed protection, and not the kind her 11-year-old son could provide. The signs were too obvious for him to ignore, and he needed to speak with her. He needed to tell her that she needed to remove herself from the situation. He could give her the means and the knowledge. He could boost her courage. He could hopefully talk some sense into her. However, he couldn't do it for her. The thought of Gordon putting those bruises on her made him want to tear the guy apart. Bella was so meek, so delicate, ultimate femininity. How could anyone want to hurt her? He looked at the earnest young man across from him. Logan, about your mom. Does she? You need to come quick. Please come quick. Mark and Logan turned as one. The hysterical voice came from Mandy, the little blonde who'd gone off with Jojo. She slapped her hand on the table and ran off. Mark never questioned her. He rose and ran after her. Logan came right behind. The girl led them out the door into the parking lot where a crowd of kids gathered at the far end. They broke through the crowd to find Jojo engrossed in a battle against two larger kids and Eric lying on the asphalt, unconscious, a girl leaning over him. Ah, hell, Mark said. Someone call 911, he barked. Tell them we need police and ambulance. He dove into the battle, grabbing up the two older kids. His large, steely hands wrapped around each kid's upper arm. When one tried to throw a punch at him, he gave him a not too subtle shake. Be still, he warned. Breathing hard, Jojo pointed at the one with the shaved head. He knocked Eric in the head with a freaking skateboard. Jojo, calm down. See to Eric. Jojo nodded and wiped his face and knelt down by his cousin. Mark looked around at the crowd. I need a few more parents, please. Kids disappeared, and only a few seconds later, adults came pouring from the pizza world. Mark turned custody of the boys over to a couple men and went to his nephew's side. It was worse than he thought. Eric's head lay in a pool of blood. Mark ripped off his shirt and pressed the material against a large gaping wound on the right side of Eric's head. Someone shoved a jacket up under the child's head. Someone else covered him. Eric's eyes fluttered open briefly. Hey, kiddo, you're going to be all right, Mark said. I never saw it coming, he whispered. It's okay, buddy. Eric's eyes closed, and Mark watched his breathing, took his pulse, bile rising at the thought of the worst-case scenario. He quickly banished that thought from his mind, briefly closed his eyes, and prayed for healing. It was only another minute before the emergency crew arrived. Mark backed away and turned his nephew's care over to the paramedics. He pulled out his phone and hit a number. Ricky, he said breathlessly, Eric's hurt. Some kid hit him in the head with a skateboard. No, Rick, he's not conscious, and it's not good. They said they're going to transport him to Long Beach, California, Long Beach Children's Hospital. Yes, yes, I'll see you there. Mark ran a hand through his hair and joined his son, who was being questioned by the cops. So many kids had come forward to tell the story that the cops quickly had the gist of the situation. Mark turned Jojo's face up to inspect. A trickle of blood ran from his nose, and then there were some scratches on his cheek by his eye and a knot on his forehead. You okay? Yes, sir. I tried to help, Dad. Jojo said as he turned back to the police who'd been taking his statement. When the guy hit Eric and he fell down, completely out, they intended to kick him and to keep pounding on him. They could have killed him. I pushed the big one over and got his attention, and then they both came at me, which was what I wanted, anything to keep them away from Eric. What started it? The cop asked. Why did the kid hit your friend with his skateboard? He didn't do anything, if that's what you're trying to say, Jojo stated defiantly. And he's my cousin. And the two started it for the usual reason, just because Eric is Ricky Keno's kid. He's... Oh, man. The cops turned to Mark, who nodded. I'm Ricky Keno's stepbrother, Mark Adams. Eric's my nephew, and this is my son, Joseph. A murmur went through the crowd as the news spread. Mark took a second to spot Logan. He found him kneeling by Eric's side as the paramedics worked on him. We came outside in the parking lot because it was so loud inside, and we wanted to talk to some girls we just met, Jojo explained. He motioned to the two boys who were cuffed and sitting on the curb, being interviewed by more cops. Those two stopped us, asked to borrow some money, and Eric turned them down. They started taunting him, pushing him. He told them to stop, but they kept on. It was embarrassing, you know. I mean, we were with girls. Mark closed his eyes briefly as he knew what Jojo was about to say. And Eric warned them that he was a black belt and that if they kept it up, he was going to have to make them stop. And then they recognized him and told him his dad was a fake and that he was going to have to prove he could really do all that martial arts stuff. So the next time the guy shoved Eric, he turned and kicked him in the head and laid the guy out. And the other guy started throwing punches, but Eric just blocked them. I bent down to check on the guy who was down and told Eric he was okay. And Eric turned to look at me for just a second. And that's when the other guy grabbed a skateboard and whacked Eric in the head. I told the girl I was with to go find you, Dad, and I tried to hold the two guys off until you got out here. Mark laid a gentle hand on Jojo's shoulder. You did good, son. He looked at the cop. I need to get to the hospital so I can be with Eric until his parents get there. The officer nodded. We'll follow up with you later. Mark handed him one of his cards. Thank you. He turned in time to see them loading Eric in an ambulance. Come on, Logan, he called. Face pale, Logan joined Mark and Jojo, and they rushed to the car. They didn't speak in the car because Mark used the time to contact the family. They arrived at the hospital 15 minutes later. Mark left Jojo and Logan in the waiting room and went back to see about Eric. Several minutes later, Eric's parents arrived with Eric's little sister, Taylor, their faces grave. Jojo spotted them as they rushed through the doors. Uncle Rick, Jojo called. As a unit, Ricky, Bree, and Taylor turned toward Jojo. Ricky knelt down. Jojo, have you heard anything? No, sir. Dad is back there with Eric. He peered up into his aunt's stricken face. I'm sorry, Aunt Bree. I didn't... He choked on a sob. A tear ran down his face. Ricky placed his hand on Jojo's cheek. You can't blame yourself. Eric is responsible for his own actions. He squeezed his nephew's arm. We'll talk later. I gotta go back to see about Eric now. Taylor, you stay here with Jojo. Taylor nodded as tears ran down her face, and Bree bent down and kissed her and then turned to kiss Jojo's cheek. Everything's going to be okay, she said. You just wait and see. Ricky and Bree disappeared through the double doors. A few minutes later, Mark emerged. Over the next hour, Logan watched an amazing happening. The Keno family in action. Next to arrive were the grandparents, Grandmaster Eric Keno and his wife, Shelley, who Logan knew had been a Mark Grand champion. They stepped in and quickly arranged for added security and a private waiting room. It wasn't long before Ricky and Bree entered the new waiting area. The news wasn't great, but it could have been worse. The doctors found Eric had a minimally depressed skull fracture. He was taken into surgery to ensure no internal brain damage had occurred. June Flower Keno arrived, the youngest daughter of Eric and Shelley. She was a doctor, among other things, and the family was listening to her intently as she gave her take on little Eric's condition. When she declared to the family that young Eric was going to be just fine, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Logan watched as they stood in a circle, held hands, and prayed. It was Grandmaster Keno doing the praying. It was weird, Logan thought. There seemed to be like power coming off of him. Everyone prayed except Jojo, who was slumped in a chair, eyes cast downward. Logan, thinking he could do some good, went to him and sat down in the chair next to him. You okay? Jojo looked up and nodded. I keep feeling like it's my fault. Why? I should have seen the guy behind him, or I should have done more to keep the fight from happening. You know what I mean? Logan shook his head. No. I mean, it seems to me you're blaming yourself instead of the guy who swung that skateboard. I mean, I barely know Eric, but I want to go find that guy and tear him apart. Jojo sighed. Yeah, me too. But Granddad says the need for revenge will destroy you. Yeah, but I'd rather beat up on that kid than listening to you blame yourself. Jojo smiled. Yeah, good point. They sat quietly, watching more people file into the room. Are all these people? I think I lost for a minute. Jojo smiled. Yeah, good point. They sat quietly, watching more people file into the room. Are all these people part of your family? Logan finally asked. Jojo grinned. Sort of confusing, isn't it? He pointed at his grandparents. You know Grandmaster Keno, right? He's Ricky's dad. He's married to my grandmother, who was more like a mother to me because she raised me. Logan's eyes followed where Jojo pointed, and even though the woman was Jojo's grandmother, Logan had a hard time believing it. She looked practically the same age as his mom. When Granddad met her, she already had Aunt Bree, and my dad and Uncle Joey, and Granddad already had Ricky. And Ricky's mom died when he was 11. My age, Logan said softly. Yeah, it must have been sad for him. I can't really say because my mom died when I was a baby, but I know how I'd feel if, like, something happened to Grandma. Anyway, then Granddad and Grandma got married and had Juneflower. That's her over there with the long, dark, curly hair. Yeah, she's really pretty. Couldn't miss her. Jojo shrugged. She's a brainiac. Anyway, so then even though Ricky and Bree were stepbrother and sister because their parents got married, they were madly in love with each other and so they got married. They had Eric and Taylor. That's Eric's little sister. He pointed out a little girl who looked like a younger version of Juneflower. So who were those people? Well, those two Korean guys are Justin and Jason Lee. They're like family. They've been Granddad's best friends since before Ricky was born. And that blonde lady is Jason's wife, Aunt Angel. And that girl there that looks a lot like Juneflower is Kimmy. She's Jason and Angel's daughter. And that lady there is Justin's wife. They don't have any kids. So where's your Uncle Joey? I don't know. He works for Uncle Jason, so he may be out on assignment. If he is, then Jason is the only one who can reach him. On assignment? Yeah, he's an agent for Ameritech Security. Like an FBI agent? Yeah, sort of. They fell silent a moment. Jojo scrubbed his hands over his face. This is making me crazy. I mean, what if something is bad wrong with Eric? I heard your grandma say no one is to say anything negative. Yeah, I know, but he shook his head. Logan, you see, Eric and me, we're really close. I mean, like brothers. I should have seen that guy. Why didn't I see him? I don't know. Why wasn't I out there with you? If I had been, maybe I would have seen him. Jojo's chin quivered. If he's not okay, I don't know what I'll do. Logan patted Jojo's back. He'll be okay. Your aunt said so. New scene. Breeze excused herself from the lecherous congressman to see if she could find her supposed escort. Not that he was much better, although he was younger and much better looking. She turned her head just in time to see him approaching. There you are. I just want to say thanks for leaving me alone with Congressman Richards, she said sarcastically. He couldn't. Hey, what are you doing? Joey's fingers closed tightly around her wrist. Will you please stop pulling on me? She whispered. Just come with me, he whispered back. I want you to stand over here in this doorway, he continued, leading her down a corridor. When you see me come by with Gordon, you head back to get Bella. But where? He shoved her into a threshold up against a closed door. No time. Be right back. He could hear the conversation as he approached. Gordon, please, Bella said. Not here. Well, maybe you should have thought how it looked with you dripping all over that guy. Do you have any idea what that makes me look like? I wasn't. Ow, Gordon, don't do this. Let go. You're messing up my hair. Ow, please. Gordon, Joey said loudly. There you are. Sorry to interrupt you two lovebirds, he said, slurring his speech. He wrapped an arm around Gordon's shoulder. Just can't keep away from each other, huh? I feel the same way about Breeze. Bella, tell me you won't mind if I borrow your sweetie for a minute. He's the only one that can settle the little dispute I'm having. He didn't wait for Bella's permission. A little pressure, and Gordon had no choice but to go with him. Joey glanced at Bella as he walked her husband away, giving her a sloppy grin. He leaned close to Gordon as they turned the corner and walked down the corridor where he'd left Breeze. I hope you don't mind helping me out, man. I mean, heck, we're practically related now, huh? Breeze rolled her eyes at Joey's words as she waited for him to pass with Gordon in tow. Once they turned the next corner, she dashed back to Bella, who stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall. Her hair was falling off to one side, her face pale, her hands shaking. Bella, Breeze said gently as she approached. Joey said you were back here. Are you okay? Bella stood tall and gave a shaky smile. Yes, of course I'm okay. Why would you ask that? Breeze pressed her lips together to keep from screaming at her sister. Because I know Gordon, and I know how mean he can be. Were you two having a fight? Not really. Did he hurt you? Breeze, please, I don't want to argue with you now. Her voice cracked. Breeze grabbed her sister and hugged her. Okay, I'm sorry, Bella. It's okay. Here, let me help fix your hair. Bella stood still and let her sister administer to her. Once her hair was again presentable, Breeze looked her over and smiled. There, good as new. Thank you. Breeze looked deeply into her sister's eyes. Just one thing, Bella. I have to say just one thing. You don't have to stay. Please, sweetie, get out before it's more than just a messed up hairdo. Okay, I'm done. Just think about it. She linked her arm with her sister's and escorted her back up the corridor. In the meantime, Joey stopped just outside the large dining hall. Where'd they go? Well, hell, they all left. Probably because they knew I was about to prove them all wrong. I told them to hold on. I was going to go get Gordon Landau, and he'd set them straight. Gordon sighed impatiently. And just what was I supposed to set them all straight about? You know, that movie I did where the guy got away with murder due to a technicality? They said that would never really happen, and I begged to differ. What do you say, Gordon? It could happen, Gordon said indifferently, and then smiled proudly. Especially if I were defending him, it would be highly likely. Aha, Joey crowed. I knew you'd agree with me. His cell phone vibrated again for the third time in a row. Exasperated, he pulled it from his pocket and noted the number. Excuse me, Gordon, I have to take this. He walked away. Yeah, Joey said to Jason. A moment later, he cursed softly. He's in surgery now? I'm on my way. But, yeah, I guess you're right. Listen, tell everyone. Got it. Keep me posted. Is there a problem? Breeze asked from behind him. My nephew was assaulted. Some punk cracked his skull with a skateboard and they have him in surgery now. You need to leave? Joey shook his head. No. Jason said they're pretty certain he's going to be fine. It's just the waiting game now. He told me to stay on the job. I can't do any good there. They'll keep me posted. Breeze nodded. I'm sorry, really. Thanks. Try to keep positive thoughts. Those were the instructions from my mother. Do you always listen to your mother? Breeze teased. Joey didn't even smile. He only blinked earnestly. Always. New scene. 3 grueling hours later, the doctor entered the waiting room. Mr. and Mrs. Keno? Ricky and Bree rose and stepped forward. How is he? He's going to be fine. Bree broke down and cried tears of relief, as did most of the other females in the room. Ricky circled his arm around her for support while he blinked back his own tears. The fracture is clean, the doctor went on. No debris or bone fragments. There is, however, a cerebral contusion, and we'll need to keep him here for observation for a few days. Juneflower dried her tears and stepped forward to ask several pertinent questions. The doctor didn't know her, but knew of her. He answered her questions in detail. Grinning, Joe and Logan hugged each other before they thought better of it and separated. Mark rested his hand on his son's shoulder and smiled down at Logan. Well, it's almost midnight, guys. Logan, I guess I need to get you home. Logan hung his head. Yes, sir. I guess I'll see you next Saturday, Jojo said. Logan cheered up. Yeah, I'll be there. Let me tell the family goodbye and we'll get on the road, Mark said. Jojo, you make your rounds. Jojo rolled his eyes and went about saying his goodbyes to his family members. Mark approached Ricky and Bree, his jaw clenched tightly. I don't know what to say, he began. What do you mean? Bree said, smiling sweetly at her younger brother. I think you know, Mark said. You trusted me to take care of Eric, and it comes down to this. I mean, he could have died. Mark, guilt is a negative, destructive emotion, Ricky said, and I know you know that. If Bree and I had been at the Pizza World with Eric tonight and he wanted to walk outside with a girl, I feel certain we would have let him. It would have gone down the exact same way. The guilty party is the kid who hit him and Eric himself for running his mouth. If absolution is what you want, little bro, you got it from me. Mark nodded and forced the emotions back under the surface. Me too, Bree said, kissing his cheek. Thanks, Mark said, heaving a sigh. I'll be on my knees tonight in gratitude. For sure, Ricky agreed. Well, I need to get Logan back to his house. Yeah, that's an interesting story I'd like to hear, Ricky said. Yes, it is. Later. He shook Ricky's hand, kissed his sister and niece, hugged his mother and stepfather, kissed his little sister June Flower, and Jason's daughter Kimmy, waved to the rest of the crowd, and took his leave. And that is the end of chapter 2.